Hi, welcome to the last part of the capital accumulation chapter, and in this part, basically, we will look to the monopolization trend of the capitalist economic system. Well, basically, the word Marx has used is centralization of capital, but easily this has become monopolization as a name by the in the Marxian context. And the main idea has become the competition which Marx has described between between the companies, which we have also discussed partially in this part, where basically companies competing with each other to get higher market share, decreasing their production costs and increasing scale of production, which might be something good for the economic system, which creates this enormous expansion of the output level in the economic system and production potential in the economic system. Might not last. Actually, in 19th century, late 19th century, some people argued this was already fading away phase of capitalist system. Why? Because most sectors were dominated by a single company or a few companies, maybe. So having smaller number of companies in those sectors, they argued capitalist system has entered to a new phase, and they call it a new phase, which was called monopoly phase of the capitalist system. And there are a lot of discussions on this monopoly phase of the capitalist system. Lenin is a very famous example of a person who describes it. And he basically one of the arguments that was also there are those large financial corporations which also exist in this phase, and because people's capital, idle capital, the capital that is in money form, is usually held by those large corporations, and those financial corporations are able to lend that money to anyone they want. They become like the most dominant, most effective segment of the capitalist system, according to this view. And they are called basically financial capital. That's a part we won't see, unfortunately. Actually, it's an interesting part of the Marxian analysis, in my opinion, but we won't see that part. But still, financial capital is very finance capital in Turkish. It's used a lot in Marxian literature. Well, there are different arguments, and in the late 19th century, actually, Marxian economics itself has divided into two different currents. One current was assuming that the new phase of the capitalist system is not that bad. Why? Why? Because you have large companies, which means large companies are able to survive with smaller amount of profit. Because there is not that much high drive of competition, and individually, with a smaller amount of profits, their owners can survive, and they may even make sufficient necessary investments with that small amount of money, because they are so huge that small percentage of profit is still large for them. And then these large corporations are easier to deal with by the unions, by thousands of workers they can organize easily and basically negotiate with those company owners. While if we have small workshops, each one of them is only containing 100 workers or so. Those 100 workers, the owner might not have that much power in that case, because he's actually built on, he's actually kind of subject to sources of the competition, the forces of competition. And workers in general in the sector-wide cannot organize that easily, because each of them are working in a different workshop. And what this one company makes becomes much more dominant for the state. So state might also be willing to negotiate with this company and actually let this company to serve the interests of the greater society, and also let this company also don't disregard the workers' interests working inside of the company. So these are the ideas, but according to the other current, these ideas basically had led to the current of the social democracy, and in time they were connected with the Keynesian ideas and built this modern social democratic political current also. They were very much, the scientific ideas were very much in line with the ideological ideas. And even in the British, American tradition, Keynes is more dominant. In the European tradition, actually, the social democracy, Marxism is more dominant. Marx had the social democracy current faith by Marx is more dominant. By all to the other current, they basically argue that this is not the case. Why this is not the case? Because these large companies are still competing. Even if there is a single company in the sector, that sector can still be invaded by other companies. So if you have, let's say, 1,000 companies, 1,000 large companies in the whole economic system, those 1,000 large companies are actually competing with each other. They are not competing just with the companies that are within their own sectors. So this and threat of invasion certainly make existing companies to be careful, to act to protect themselves. In Turkey, actually, there is this one company who bought the transportation, previous state transportation company between the Istanbul and Bursa, and then it has increased the prices. Not officially, but actually there is a fixed price. But if you want to reserve first, get first reservation, right, you need to pay a higher price. But then previously you did not pay that price, so the previous price becomes a really inferior type of ticket. Previously it was a normal type of ticket, and if you want to get a better type of ticket, then you need to pay now a higher price. Well, basically, there were protests by the people, and in that the company has, to some extent, it changed its policies, because the monopoly has realized there is a threat of invasion of its monopoly market. So monopolies might feel this threat of invasion of the market, and also they need because of that they need to continuously invest. So and these large companies, each of them has large capacity to invest. So basically, they still need those high profit rates. Why? Because in order to be able to invest, they need this high amount of money coming. And still, I mean, if one of them has made an investment that is $1 billion, the other one needs to also make that investment. So investment is kind of, and that's one rule of the rule we should mention maybe also here. Investment is something that companies doesn't have a choice to. They need to invest in an economic system with competition. So they still need large profits. They still basically will exploit their workers, in some cases extreme sense, whenever possible, whenever workers are not organized. The worker organizations are in different ways. Worker organization and the consciousness of workers are only things that might basically change these trends. And basically state becomes, especially if the workers are not organized and again and conscious, state becomes just a tool of for the competition between the companies. So basically, the state's action when they set standards, when they decide on certain policies, when they even organize foreign relations, all of these decisions are subject to the interest of the companies, and those companies might basically use state as their tool, basically. So in other words, and those companies can use also other things, ideologies, in some cases maybe religion, everything as their tool for cooperation. Because now they are more powerful. Now they are able to use other types of tools for competition. So basically, the competition gets more intense, and everything is sucked up into that competition, according to this view. So monopoly stage of capitalism might be more violent than the previous stage of capitalism, according to this view. While there is another trend, actually, Mashaik is leading that. So it's just arguing monopoly capitalism might not be necessarily maybe that much different from the previous capitalism. Actually, there might not be two different phases. The similar rules might be still right. Even though sizes of the company might be larger on average, the rules might be still the same. That's another view also. So this is a major discussion in Marxian school. I have just touched that discussion. If you are interested, look to that discussion in detail. But I'm leaving it here. See you in the next next lecture, which will be on. I have two lectures basically for the coming week. One of them is on the falling rate of capital, which is falling rate of profits, which is actually according to Marx the most important trend of capitalist system. The other one is on the depressions and crisis, which we will discuss Marxian, and to some extent also I will compare it with the Keynesian models of the crisis and depressions, basically. So see you then, and of course stay healthy.